Hey everyone, I was excited today that Coinbase enabled the Bitcoin Lightning Network for my account. They've been rolling it out throughout their customer base, and I thought now would be a good time to talk about what is the Bitcoin Lightning Network, why do we need it, etc. All right, so the first topic to understand is that money is layered, and what I mean by that is that when you transmit money between Cash App or within Venmo or within PayPal, that you are not actually settling with the other person. They're keeping a ledger for you, but that's not a final transaction. Same with Visa and MasterCard. When you pay for something with Visa and MasterCard, that is not what's called final settlement. Final settlement is when all the banks settle up with each other and with the Federal Reserve, and everybody agrees on what the sort of underlying state of the bank account is in an irreversible way. So on the US dollar, there's tons of activity above the base layer. If you want to transact on the base layer, you've got to do something called a wire transfer. If you've ever done a wire transfer, it's probably because you're moving large amounts of money to maybe a brokerage account for investments, or to buy stocks and bonds, or to Coinbase to buy, relatively large amounts of Bitcoin. And if you use, that is normally done through Fedwire. Internationally, there's services called Swift and things like that. Those services typically charge $25 to do a transaction. So if you go to your bank and say, hey, I want to wire money, I want to do Fedwire, Fedwire, I want to use Fedwire to wire funds to somebody, what is that going to cost me? Typically, they'll tell you that's costs about $25. Okay, so when you're using Fedwire, when you're doing a wire transfer of funds, you are doing the equivalent of using the Bitcoin base layer. Now, right before I started this video, I checked on what is a transaction cost on the Bitcoin base layer, and it's about $3 right now. It goes up and down, but it's about $3. And the price is based on how much traffic there is on the Bitcoin network. Well, $3 is way less than $25, and you can transmit an unlimited amount of money or unlimited amount of value in the form of Bitcoin to anyone, anywhere in the world. So paying $3 to transmit unlimited value to absolutely anyone, anywhere in the world in a way that nobody can stop you, uncensorable, unstoppable, and, that's an incredible value, and it's a big part of the reason Bitcoin is so valuable. Okay, so you can do that, but it costs you $3. Well, if you were trying to live your life only using Fedwire by wiring money all over the place, you'd be paying a $25 fee every time you bought anything. Obviously, that's unworkable because you can't go to a store and buy something for $3 and pay a $25 fee. Okay, well, same with Bitcoin. You don't want to buy a $3 coffee and pay a $3 fee on the core Bitcoin base layer network. Okay, so what is the solution to that? So the solution, which has been in development for years now, is called the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is what's called a layer 2, an L as in layer, a layer 2 solution for payments. So the same way Visa and MasterCard and PayPal and Cash App and Venmo are all layer 2 solutions on top of Fedwire, on top of the base layer for the US dollar, the Bitcoin Lightning Network is a layer 2 solution for the Bitcoin network. The difference, of course, is the Lightning Network transmits only Bitcoin, whereas the Fedwire transmits US dollars. Okay, so how does it work? Well, the way in the implementation that Coinbase has enabled, you can invoice people, and they get a QR code or they get a string of digits. They enter it in their app, either in Coinbase or Cash App or anything that is enabled with the Lightning Network, and they can pay that invoice. So I posted a $10 sample invoice on my Facebook page so you can see what it looks like. But anybody in the world can post a invoice that looks like that. It's a single-use invoice. And if somebody scans the QR code with Cash App or Coinbase or Strike, which is STRIKE, if they scan that QR code, they can then pay that invoice. The reason that's so powerful is because in the future, it may take 5 or 10 years to become broadly accepted, you'll be able to pay for just about anything by scanning a QR code or using, your Apple Watch with near field communication, NFC, where you just hold it up to a payment terminal for contactless payments. And so once already the Lightning Network is enabled for Coinbase, which is the largest cryptocurrency exchange, which is like a cryptocurrency bank in the United States. So it's a big deal that Coinbase enabled this, and as it rolls out over time, the same way everybody is moving from using credit cards by actually swiping them, which was insecure, and then they started using credit cards by shoving them into the machine so it can read a chip, and now more and more people are using contactless payments, where you hold your Apple Watch or your Google Watch up against the payment terminal, and it automatically pays, or in the future, you'll be able to do the same thing with Coinbase or Cash App or any of those apps, and you'll be able to just scan a QR code and pay for stuff. So what's the benefit of doing that? Well, one, right now, the only elegant way to pay for things using Bitcoin anywhere in the world is something like the Coinbase debit card. The Coinbase debit card works great because it uses the Visa network as a layer 2 network. You've got the Bitcoin base layer, then you've got Coinbase, and then Coinbase and a combination of Coinbase and Visa serve as a layer 2 solution to handle payments on top of the Bitcoin network. And then every so often they settle with the core Bitcoin network, which is going to cost them $3 right now. So if Coinbase wants to transact on the main chain, it costs them $3, but they don't do that very often. They wait for Visa to process a bunch of transactions, and then they settle up with Visa with a single transaction that costs $3. So essentially it allows them to batch process transactions, which is exactly what Visa does with Fedwire. They wait for a bunch of transactions to go through, and then they settle up with everybody with larger transactions that cost them actual real money to transact on Fedwire or Swift or however Visa and MasterCard settle up. Okay, so the Bitcoin Lightning Network has the ability to take the place of payment services like MasterCard and Visa and others. The reason that's a big deal is the cost of running a Bitcoin or paying for things with the Bitcoin Lightning Network. In the case of Coinbase, they set it at 0.1%. So Visa and MasterCard actually charge about 2.9%. So when you go use a Visa or MasterCard card, the person you are using the card with is paying Visa or MasterCard somewhere in the ballpark of 2.9% in order to process that transaction. Now, they're willing to do that because their alternatives is to take cash, which is a pain, or to take checks, and checks could bounce and they could never get paid. So in order to be guaranteed that MasterCard or Visa's going to pay them, they're willing to give up that 2.9%. Now, the benefit, though, of the Bitcoin Lightning Network is you get all the same benefits of getting the cash, in this case Bitcoin, of getting the Bitcoin immediately, but you don't have to pay Visa and MasterCard for that service. You get it built in natively to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which means you can process payments instantly for a fraction of a penny, or in the case of Coinbase, if you use their service, which is an implementation of the Lightning Network, they've decided to set fees at 0.1%. So 0.1% as opposed to 2.9% means it is 1/29th cheaper. That is 1/29th as expensive to transact. And if you are a merchant, meaning any type of shop owner, and your profit margins are only 2 or 3% anyway, and half of that profit margin is being eaten up by Visa or MasterCard, then if you are running a company with a 3% profit margin and you're paying 3% to Visa and MasterCard, you can literally double your profitability by switching over to the Bitcoin Lightning Network and essentially paying almost nothing for transactions. And of course, you can do that with Bitcoin, and you can do it anywhere in the world. And unlike Cash App and Venmo and PayPal, all of those services require you to have an account on their platform to transact. The Bitcoin Lightning Network is a completely neutral network, meaning you can use the Bitcoin Lightning Network to connect anybody. So I can send money from Coinbase to Cash App, even if I don't have an account on Cash App. Maybe I have an account on Coinbase, the other person has an account on Cash App. We don't have to be on the same service because the Bitcoin Lightning Network is universal, which means it runs on all of those networks, and you don't have to have a specific account on the exact network that you're trying to transact on. So it runs above that. So to recap a few different elements. One, the Bitcoin base layer network. Right now, again, it goes up and down quite a bit, but right now it costs about $3 to transact on an unlimited amount of money in a single transaction on the Bitcoin base layer. If you're transacting within Coinbase or within Cash App, then you don't pay anything because you're transacting just on their network and they're not actually settling to the base layer immediately. So you can't really use that to buy a cup of coffee because it would double the price of a cup of coffee. But the Bitcoin Lightning Network takes the place of things like the Coinbase debit card, so that you can pay almost zero transaction fees in order to transact for small payments anywhere in the world. And it's super easy and it's really elegant. And I think Coinbase has done a great job with the implementation. So anyway, in the long-term future, I believe not only will Bitcoin take over as the future monetary system of the world, but I also believe that the Bitcoin Lightning Network is likely to be the primary payment network that takes over worldwide. So over time, little by little, people will switch from using the Visa and MasterCard networks, and they'll basically enable the Bitcoin Lightning Network. And initially, almost nobody will use it except people like me and maybe you. And then over time, more people will use it. And pretty soon, the vendors will realize that 1% of their customers are using the Bitcoin Lightning Network to pay for stuff when they have the choice of how to pay rather than Visa or MasterCard. And for those transactions are twice as profitable because they're saving that 2.9% transaction fee that they would otherwise have to send to Visa or MasterCard. So over time, they will encourage customers to use the Bitcoin Lightning Network to transact natively with Bitcoin. Because again, if you use the Coinbase debit card, it doesn't cost you anything, but the merchant on the other end has to pay Visa and MasterCard, just like with any debit card or credit card. And the Bitcoin Lightning Network does not require that. So over time, things will slowly shift. Visa and MasterCard probably won't notice they have a problem until maybe 15, 20, 25% of the transactions are on the Bitcoin Lightning Network, which will probably take maybe 5 or 10 years. Even I remember I was super excited about Apple Pay and the ability to use contactless payments on the Apple Watch. And it took forever. It took absolutely forever for contactless payments to become a big deal and really usable on the iPhone and then ultimately the Apple Watch. I mean, it was probably 5 years from when I first read about that to that technology and got excited about it until I could actually make a transaction with my iPhone and my Apple Watch. So the same thing is true here. It'll take time for the Bitcoin Lightning Network to be adopted by merchants, merchants meaning companies that want to take your money in exchange for goods and services. It'll take time for them to adopt it. And as more and more people use it, more and more will adopt it. And everything in the world of Bitcoin is slowly, then suddenly. Meaning it seems to take forever for something to happen, and then overnight something big seems to happen all of a sudden. And payments will work the exact same way. So that's it. You got the Bitcoin base layer that costs, let's call it $3 to transact on, but you don't have to pay that cost unless you're transacting on the base layer. And there's a need, of course, to have a payment network built on top of that, similar to Visa and MasterCard on top of the US dollar. And the Bitcoin Lightning Network is that. It works great. Adoption will take time. It may be a year or two before you even see a QR code pop up on a vendor, on a payment terminal, asking you if you want to pay with the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So it'll take time. In the meantime, anybody who has Cash App or Coinbase or Strike, although Cash App and Coinbase are by far the two most popular apps in the United States that have that support the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Those, especially Cash App, has a lot of payment terminals in their Square block/Square company. So anyway, it's going to be a big deal. I'm excited about it. And if anybody wants to try it out, just send me a $10 or less invoice on the Lightning Network, and I will pay it, and you'll see how it works. It's pretty super cool. And the transaction fee is so low that it costs, again, in the case of Coinbase, it costs 0.1% to transact on the Lightning Network. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, go watch the Andreas Antonopoulos video that I posted in response to one of the comments on my video about, on my post about the Bitcoin or the Coinbase Lightning Network implementation. I linked to the Andreas Antonopoulos video where he talks about the Lightning Network, how it works. He is a legend in the Bitcoin space and knows way more about it than I do. And that video maybe is 24 minutes or 26 minutes or something like that long. Feel free to check that out and check out that video. And he goes through a lot of explanation more about the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So as always, Bitcoin marches on. A couple days ago when I I think it was Friday, maybe Friday, when I recorded a couple videos. Bitcoin was sitting at about 57,000 a coin. Right now it's about 64,000 a coin, so it's up, in the ballpark of about 10% in the last few days. So that's good. Hopefully it'll keep going that way. And regardless what happens in the near term, in the long term, adoption marches on, and adoption relentlessly marches on. So happy to help. Hopefully this is helpful. Thanks, everyone.